Hey everybody, it's Dan, and as promised, here is my review and outlooks on Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. Now, that may sound a little bit ridiculous to you, um, and you're right. I mean, it's Part 6 of a slasher horror film series. It's not exactly, the pinnacle of cinema by any means. And this is no exception. The thing that makes this particular film my absolute favorite in the series, however, is that it just completely stopped taking itself seriously in this one and turned out to be a lot of fun. Um, Unlike the Nightmare on Elm Street films, which just continued to take themselves seriously and try to act like they were actually, good films, despite obviously not being good films whatsoever. This one really ended up just having some fun with itself and, making a little bit of fun with itself. Making a little bit of fun of itself, I should say. Um, which was great. It's always good when the series sort of gets a sense of humor about itself and just kind of stops, this pulls out all the stops and just doesn't really care anymore and isn't ashamed of having a bit of fun. And that's exactly what this film is, just a whole lot of fun. So we'll start off with why it's called Jason Lives. Now, obviously, as I mentioned in the previous film, Friday the 13th Part 5 did not have Jason in it at all. He did not kill anybody in it. He was not alive. He was killed at the end of Part 4 by Tommy. Of course, Tommy is still in this one, and now at the very beginning, he wants to make absolute certain that Jason is dead. He's still, for the last couple of years, been having nightmares and dreams. He says he almost killed the gal who was one of the caregivers in the facility that he was in. Fortunately, he didn't. So he's still, with the exception of Jason, not a murderer. Well, I guess I should say with the exception of Jason and with the exception of assisting in killing the guy from Part 5. He's not a murderer. I mean, he has never murdered anybody in cold blood. We'll leave it at that. But he is responsible for Jason's death. But he decides, because of all these dreams that he's been having, that he just wants to dig up Jason's body and cover it with gasoline and burn it just completely. Which is sort of odd because in the previous film it is mentioned that Jason was cremated. So, I don't know, whatever. I guess they just sort of ignored that fact, and they're moving on with Tommy essentially cremating him in this one. That's fine, whatever. So, Tommy and a buddy of his escape from their mental institution that they're in and go and dig up Jason's body in the cemetery. Of course, Tommy sort of freaks out upon seeing Jason's body in the ground, and he brought along the hockey mask that he had in the fifth one for whatever reason, and he sets it down alongside the grave as they're digging, which basically just allows for Jason to be able to grab it and have his hockey mask on again during this sequel. Whatever. But it was a sort of a clever way to keep that classic Jason image wearing the hockey mask. So they dig him up, and Tommy just loses it and goes and somehow manages to rip off a piece of a wrought iron fence that's welded together and everything. He just somehow manages to rip it right out. And you would think with that incredible amount of strength on such a skinny guy, he would be basically invincible. I don't know, but he's not. So he takes it and just starts stabbing it into Jason over and over and over again, puts it in there, leaves it in there, and it starts to rain, downpour, thunder, lightning. Lightning hits the rod and somehow resurrects the body of Jason. Totally ridiculous concept for Jason's return, but fans wanted Jason's return, and that is what we got. Whether it be a good and original way of having him return or not, whatever. Now, I have a theory on Jason's return in this film that one should keep in mind for the 9th film in the series, and that is that when Jason's body is resurrected in this film, that's all that's resurrected. There might be a part of Jason's soul, whatever, trapped inside of his mind, but it's not Jason. It's actually just a demonic entity that has entered the body of Jason when it was resurrected, just basically waited in hell for that, perfect opportunity to be able to hop into a body that was being resurrected, and from here on out is just riding along in the body of Jason Voorhees, wantonly slaughtering people. It's just a theory, but it's important for 3 films in this series from now. Anyway, so basically, Jason ends up coming back, killing this guy, almost killing Tommy, but Tommy, of course, manages to escape because, once again, in this film, he is our hero. And he runs into this girl who I guess was infatuated with him before he got sent away to the institution. And her father, who is the sheriff of the town now, of Crystal Lake, whose name has changed to, Green Villa or something like that, in order to, try to distance themselves from the Jason Voorhees legend, and say, hey, this stuff doesn't happen here anymore. Jason's gone. We can reopen this camp. And that is exactly what they do in the interim. They have reopened this camp, called it, of course, Camp Green, whatever the name of the town is now. It's no longer Camp Crystal Lake. But they've reopened it because Jason is dead. Of course, now at this point, he's not. And another thing, now at this point, see, before in parts 2, 3, and 4, he was a human. He was an incredibly strong human with, that uncontrolled strength that people with mental, mental deficiencies tend to have, because they just don't have the knowledge to keep their strength down. But he was just a human. Now he is not. He is a walking corpse. He is completely unstoppable at this point. Not even like a Romero zombie that you can just shoot in the head and let it be gone. He is completely unstoppable. You can pause him for a time, as happens in a few of the films, but he will never completely go away. So there's that. But he comes back naturally, and of course they have kids at the camp in this film. It's the first one in the series where they've actually had children, small children, at the camp for camp. So it adds a little bit of extra concern to the film. Despite it not taking itself seriously, it's still a lot of fun. So Tommy and another gal in this one are going around, trying to find and stop Jason. Of course, they're getting a lot of guff from her father, the sheriff, who, ends up arresting Tommy at one point. Of course, the girl manages to get him back out, and they go off to try to stop Jason from murdering any of these children, but not before Jason ends up getting all of the camp counselors and her father, the sheriff, who he actually bends in half at the waist, just bends him completely in half backwards, and he dies after shooting Jason, unloading a full revolver on him. That was pretty cool. That was a fun death scene. But eventually they decide to bring Jason into the center of Crystal Lake, where he had initially thought to have been drowned, and Tommy and the gal whose name escapes me get him to the lake. Tommy goes out on a small little motorboat and lures him out there, sets fire all around the on the lake, all around where the boat is, and basically dukes it out with him. Has a big rock that he just has a bunch of chains attached to, that he's trying to slip around Jason's neck to drag him down into the lake and just drown him and leave him there trapped forever, supposedly. So he fights with him, gets him down into the lake. Finally, he's got the thing around his neck, but he grabs Tommy's leg and is holding him underwater so that he will drown too. Girl goes out there, ends up taking the motor on the boat and moving it over to slice Jason's throat and have him stop doing anything, stop moving, let go of Tommy. Brings Tommy back onto shore and resuscitates him, and he is still alive at the end of the film. So overall, our hero from the previous two films actually gets saved by a female who is also, the one responsible for stopping Jason, essentially, in this film. So this is another one of those classic examples of, 80s, 90s horror films having strong female characters. Yeah. So, and that's pretty much what the entire series gets back to after this. Now, I say that this film just stops taking itself seriously because it jokes with itself. There's a little bit of corny humor throughout the film, and it works. It manages to, blend in well. And it's like, okay, yes, this definitely, they're just having fun now at this point. Now that aspect of the films really kind of goes away for a while with the next few films. But at least for this one, we had a great just kind of like, thrill-killing romp through Crystal Lake again. Jason gets stopped. All of the small children are rescued. And there's, jokes and just sort of some humor thrown in between things. Another really fantastic thing about this one is that in addition to Henry Manfredini, who did most of the music for all of the previous installments in the film series, Alice Cooper actually made original songs for this movie. So all of the music is done by Harry Manfredini and Alice Cooper, which is just a lot of fun. I mean, there's some, classic like 80s, 90s, hard rock type stuff mixed in with, the classic Henry Manfredini score, and even incorporating the scores from the previous films, which I thought was a really nice touch. And I'm a fan of Alice Cooper. He's a pretty interesting dude, and that really just kind of made my day while I was watching this. I had completely forgotten about that part of this film while I was rewatching it again this time around, and that just put a big old smile on my face. So that's it for this video, guys. The next video that we will be doing is Friday the 13th, Part 7, and we'll see you tomorrow for that.